Sexual assault is a reoccurring issue that happens on college campuses all across the nation. According to Lisa Wade, college attendance is a risk factor for sexual assault. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, 1 in 5 women who attend college will be the victim of completed or attempted sexual assault, compared to 1 in 6 women in the general population. Campus sexual assaults can be defined as acts of rape and sexual assault that occur during the collegiate experience, can involve, but is not limited to, crimes that occur on a college campus. The textbook states that it is estimated that between 20 and 25% of women will experience a completed or attempted rape at some point during their college career. Why are these numbers so high compared to the general population? This presentation will take a look at rape culture, victim blaming, alcohol and drug use on college campuses, as well as case studies to demonstrate these. Then we will look at some proposed solutions to end sexual assault on college campuses. To start off, I'd like to define rape culture, hookup culture, and victim blaming. Rape culture can be defined by Malacode as an environment that justifies, naturalizes, and even glorifies sexual pressure, coercion, and violence. This is especially true on college campuses, one reason being the presence of hookup culture. Hookup culture, as defined by Wade and Free, is a norm on college campuses in which casual sexual contact in the absence of romantic intentions is held by many as ideal. Victim blaming, a part of rape culture, can be defined as shifting the blame of rape from the offender to the victim. By doing so, the confrontation of the realities of victimization is avoided. Rape myths, a large contributing factor to victim blaming in general, and especially on college campuses. These are attitudes and beliefs that are generally false but are widely and persistently held, and that serve to deny and justify male sexual aggression against women. Examples of these include the way that a woman dresses or acts indicates that she asked for it, or rape occurs because men cannot control their sexual impulses. According to an academic article by Sarah McMahon, the acceptance of rape myths not only indicates problematic attitudes, but it is also a predictor in the actual perpetration of sexual violence on college campuses. The article studies college students and their views on rape and rape myths. McMahon states that although those rape myths that blatantly blame girls and women for rape have become less acceptable, many of the underlying beliefs that girls and women did something to contribute to the assault and that is not completely the perpetrator's fault still exist, but in more covert expressions. Rape culture, hookup culture, and victim blaming are all prevalent on college campuses. Lisa Wade talks about rape-prone areas on college campuses, such as parties that feature loud music, few places to sit, dancing, and drinking. Rape culture camouflages the predatory behaviors of serial rapists, like supplying women with alcohol or pulling them into secluded areas, making it look normal and more difficult to interpret as criminal. Environments such as frat houses and campus parties that are rape-prone environments, on top of existing rape myths beliefs among students, are large contributors to the ongoing rape culture on college campuses.
Sexual assault on college campuses is highly correlated with alcohol and drug use. 1 in 5 women are raped during their time spent in college, and according to a study done by the United States Department of Health and Human Services, 15% of young women experience incapacitated rape during their first year of college, and that statistic increases significantly when you account for 4 years spent in college. So just to clarify some terms, as defined by our textbook, incapacitated rape is any unwanted sexual act that occurs after a victim voluntarily consumes drugs or alcohol. So in these cases, a victim is too intoxicated to be aware of their behavior, and therefore they are unable to consent. Incapacitated sexual assault is more than twice as common as forced physical sexual assault for students, and alcohol is the leading substance abused. There is no strong correlation between the size of a university and the number of sexual assaults. So for instance, both Stanford and Baylor had 16,000 students enrolled in 2014, and Stanford reported 26 cases of rape, while Baylor only reported 4. However, if you were to observe one slight trend, it would be that prominent research universities with lower numbers of enrollment seem to report higher numbers of sexual assault. So this is research by the Washington Post, and they found that, for example, Dartmouth in 2015 had 6,350 students enrolled, and they had 42 cases of sexual assault. And then similarly, Wesleyan had almost 3,000 students enrolled and reported 37 cases. So these are extremely high numbers for the size of the university, and the common denominator here appears to be that alcohol is involved in 79% of the cases.
The Brock Turner case. In 2015, Brock Turner, a student athlete at Stanford, sexually assaulted an unconscious woman outside a frat party. Two students were biking by when they saw Turner on top of the woman. Turner ran off when they approached him, but they caught him and called the police. In 2016, Turner was convicted of assault with intent to rape, sexual penetration of an intoxicated person, and sexual penetration of an unconscious person. As a result of the sentence, he must also register as a sex offender for life. He was sentenced to 6 months in jail, of which he only served 3. In 2018, Turner appealed to the 6th District Court of Appeals in California to overturn his convictions. The defense argued that there was insufficient evidence for all 3 of his convictions. The appeal was eventually rejected. Moving on to the legal issues of this case, first off, one could argue that there may have been a form of bias involved. The judge presiding over the case, Aaron Persky, was also a Stanford athlete. The fact that the judge and the defendant had a major thing in common could have led Judge Persky to show Turner some leniency. Secondly, one thing that has come about through this case is the idea that Turner was shown leniency because he is a privileged white male, because being rich and white usually does give a person a leg up in the criminal justice system. In many of the articles about this case, they always identify Turner as a great swimmer or a standout athlete. These things aim to take away from the seriousness of the crime, as if being an athlete diminishes the seriousness of the crime. Third, Judge Persky completely ignored the minimum guidelines set out for the acts Turner was convicted of. Prosecutors were asking for 6 years corresponding to the 2-year minimum guideline for each of the 3 felony counts. This is a legal issue because what is the point of having guidelines if judges are going to blatantly ignore them? Lastly, I decided to bring up this case because it is an example of sexual assault on campus being also a legal issue. Turner's case was poorly handled, and it shows that sexual assault is not something that people take too seriously. The judge in this case abused his power and looked at the defendant and his privilege rather than the victim and her pain when he made his decision.
Another case study to consider is the Columbia rape case. This case began in 2013 when Emma Sulkowicz reported a rape to Columbia University. The accused was Jean Paul Nungesser, who was later found not guilty via university investigation. In 2014, Sulkowicz started carrying the mattress she was assaulted on around campus in an art piece titled Carry That Weight. The work received national attention and widespread support from other students at Columbia, particularly female students. It's also important to note that in 2017, Nungesser reached a settlement with the university over violation of his Title IX rights, in which Columbia reiterated that Nungesser was declared innocent via internal investigation. We decided to study this case because it highlights the unique setting in which campus assault takes place. Sulkowicz's art piece brought national attention to campus sexual assault and subsequent internal investigations. University investigations seem to hold some legal legitimacy, as Nungesser's attorney successfully used Columbia's report in a Title IX case. The legitimacy of these internal investigations have been studied by many within the legal field, including Amanda Conradi. Conradi studied university investigations in relation to legal rights and reports that the protection of the rights of the victim and the accused varies widely among universities. The Columbia rape case not only calls attention to individual rights, but also examines a university's ability to investigate campus sexual assault.
T.J. Miller, a famous actor and comedian, has a history of being accused of sexual assault. Recently, a victim came forward in the wake of increased awareness of sexual assault and its ability to remain hidden and silent. The victim described in detail the assault that took place during college. She said that Miller choked her, punched her, and left bruises on her body, which other former students verified seeing. The experience of reporting her victimization was traumatizing for her then and now, as the validity of her story continues to be doubted. This is an example of the secondary victimization that victims often endure if they decide to come forward about what happened to them. The victim admitted that the night of the assault, both her and Miller had been drinking, which Miller used at his advantage and claimed that her fractured tooth and bloodied lip were a result of her falling, not because of his physical violence against her. The use of alcohol in cases of sexual assault provides avenues for victim blaming and the assailant to find loopholes to try and defend their innocence. She was questioned about why she didn't go to the police sooner, adding further doubt to her story. But as we know, sexual assault is very traumatic, and the victim was not ready to relive or process what TJ, someone she knew well and had trusted, had done to her. A lack of physical evidence a year later also made her worry that the cops wouldn't believe her story. Since Miller was popular on campus, the victim lost many friends when she came forward because they sided with Miller and chose to believe his side of the story. Since she came forward, Miller and his wife, Kate, have played the part of the victim, claiming that she chose to hop on the bandwagon of making false accusations in an attempt to wrongfully hurt them. The victim has moved from LA because seeing his name and face everywhere has been traumatizing for her, and Miller continues to be a Hollywood star with several big film projects on the way and a successful stand-up comedy career.
One potential solution to the prevalence of sexual assault on campuses is changing the narrative of sexual assault. Many programs focus on preventing it by controlling the behavior of the victim. However, this can lead to victim blaming and justification of the act in the first place. For example, when programs focus on preventative methods such as not going out late at night, the onus of prevention can be placed on the victim, creating a narrative of what did you expect to happen. While teaching habits such as carrying pepper spray are not inherently wrong, they can indirectly support this concept. The creation of programs that focus on the act rather than the victim's preventative behavior can help solve this. By focusing on empowering women, supporting norms against violence, and teaching students what consent is, they condemn the behavior of the offender, not the victim. A good example of this is bystander intervention programs. In these programs, students are taught how to intervene and get involved when they see a potentially risky scenario occurring. This places the burden on fellow students and creates a community that is empowered to help others and does not condone sexual assault. It can also put pressure on universities to take more action against sexual assault and create a safe community rather than using victim-blaming techniques to justify not getting involved. Another solution to the trend we are seeing is to make sexual education programs more universal and start them earlier. Because the education system is state-run and decentralized, and no federal law directly requires education on this, it is hard to make sure that all schools have similar sex education programs, if any at all. Implementing a law that requires a set curriculum could make sure that we standardize access to education and provide a better understanding of its importance, rather than glazing over it. A growing number of states have begun to set laws about this, and about 25 states have created programs that implement education on sexual assault in 2016. The development of these programs early is also important, as throughout high school and puberty, teens are developing their own beliefs and values through how they are socialized and the people they are surrounded by. When programs are implemented later, they address an already ingrained nature as opposed to instituting one themselves. Because of this, it is important that programs focus on early interventions that instill knowledge of healthy sexual practices and consent during this time. For example, a study showed that these programs have only 1/3 of the effect that they have on 9th graders on 12th graders, so it is extremely important to start early education in order to best reach students. An example of a program that has started providing sexual education in K-12 schools is the Sexual Assault Response Team, or SART, in the state of Oregon. They come into classrooms once a year, every year from kindergarten through 12th grade, to provide sexual prevention training that tries to combat sexually violent norms. In lower grades, they teach respecting personal space and being aware of someone who really wants to play. And in the higher grades, they teach students about disclosure, rape myths, and what consent is. All in all, the prevalence of sexual assault and rape culture on campuses is not something to be overlooked. That being said, by implementing universal, in-depth early educational programs and attempting to combat the narratives currently surrounding sexual assault, we can make a difference and work towards ending this issue. Thank you so much for watching our symposium.